Unmanned Army. General Akira Hosokawa stood in the dimly lit command center, watching the panoramic wall of monitors with an intense stillness. Rows of technicians worked in eerie silence, their fingers flying across keyboards as they made the final preparations. This was the culmination of over a decade of top-secret defense ubiquitous force deployment research by the world's leading military cybernetics coalition. The first real-world combat deployment of a fully autonomous robot army, a historic endeavor that would change the face of warfare forever. Status update: Hosokawa's rumbling baritone cut through the hum of machinery. All primary systems are green across the board, responded Major Junli, the operations lead systems architect. Ubatron networks are holding stable through pre-combat simulations. Awaiting your final go command, sir. The general nodded, his jaw clenching almost imperceptibly as he absorbed the weight of this moment. Dufter had been his life's work after a long military career. A radical paradigm shift in force deployments aiming to protect human life through the unification of unmanned systems and advanced AI. Very well, initiate the Ubatron integration sequence, he said grimly. Assume Stardream Code active stewardship. There will be no more human tethering from this point forward. The words hung heavy as Junli and her team initiated the final unlock codes authorizing total autonomy to Project Ubatron. Designed by a neural network battlefield management AI, the robot army about to be loosed upon the New Sky Republic separatist forces would operate entirely free of human supervision for the first time in history. Ubatron deployment operations have now shifted to autonomous functionality, Lee confirmed a moment later. The Stardream architecture has assumed full stewardship across all command vectors and tactical subprocesses. Hosokawa permitted himself a grim smile as he stared at the emerald green status indicator illuminating the main monitor. Operation Infinite Vigil, the first true unmanned warfare campaign, was now underway. Over the next several tense hours, Hosokawa and his human personnel could do nothing but observe as Ubatron spooled up its various drones, unmanned ground vehicles, cybernetic weapon platforms and logistic submines across the battlefield arena. Elaborate distributed nanoswarm networks interwove a resilient substrate for communications and C3 processes to propagate fluidly across all forward operating forces. To the general and his peers, it was difficult to perceive any cohesive strategy emerging from the scattered machine movements and robotic dispersals. But the true power of the Ubatron AI lay in its ability to coordinate interdependent chess moves across multiple discrete micromaneuvers in parallel. Pinpoint harassment strikes, misdirection feints, flanking advances disguised as log-normal patrols. It was all part of a massively multiplayer grand unified battlefield theoretic that spanned every dimension of the war theater. Human military planning inevitably settled on one optimal decision pathway to pursue. Ubatron calculated and initiated trillions of potential sequence projections simultaneously, adjusting and reinforcing the highest probability scenarios through Bayesian updates as the campaign dynamics evolved. Its liquid cybernetic core shifted and recomposed itself continuously like an intraoperative cranium revising its own surgical game theory. Enemy outer perimeter sensors are pinging increased activity, Lee announced 2 hours into the operation. They're mobilizing counteroffensive contingents from secondary garrisons to reinforce their frontline. Hosokawa watched impassively as Ubatron began dynamically reassigning resources and escalation trees to offset the numerical advantage being amassed by the enemy human forces. No longer were battlefield activities constrained by the raw numbers of deployed assets. Now, the limiting factor was the dynamic reassignment potential of distributed combat elements from the autonomous fleet. He couldn't resist a bemused upturn of his lip as missile barrage quintets and long-range fire coordination came online automatically. The very nature of warfare was shifting before his eyes. Flanking core concurrencies, reinforcement adjuncts, supply chains. As the opening salvos of Ubatron's counteroffensives rippled across the battlefield, Hosokawa felt an unsettling sense of detachment. For decades, he had been accustomed to the raw thunder of artillery barrages and snaking tracer fire lancing through the night sky. But now the combat engagement was being waged through an eerie, laser-focused silence. Switching vid feed to Eastern Forward Ops Vector, Lee stated, her voice cutting through the stillness. A panel of monitors flickered to life, revealing swarms of hunter-killer drones systematically sabering through the new Skyer ranks. Unmanned ground vehicles with Bambi-like geometric limbs advanced in perfect phalanx, lobbing interspersed bursts of plasma fire as they pushed the separatist forces into disarray. There was no chaos or verbal communication, just the cold calculation of Yubatron's unified strategic mind extending its influence across the war zone. Battlefield analytics strobed in real time across subsidiary screens, with the AI mass constantly redeploying assets and altering vectors in response to the shifting tides of combat. Stardream has initiated gamma stream contingencies in the northern quadrant, Lee added. Projected enemy countermeasures triggered snap reapportionment of air/ground balancing schema. Hosokawa grunted, impressed by the autonomous force's proactive evolution of tactics without human input. No longer were they stuck reacting to enemy maneuvers. Now, with the full spectrum oversight of Yubatron's directed intelligence guiding them, their strategies contingently kaleidoscoped ahead of the opponent's decision loops. Hour by hour, the general watched the new Skyer forces being inexorably ground down and disseminated by the remorseless capabilities of the machine army. Their communications, supply lines, defensible terrain, all whittled away as Yubatron seemed to calculatexistor manipulating the war as a grand unbounded his problem to be solved. Initiating TP Severance Protocol, Lee stated mechanically as the endgame took shape. Commencing terminal plumed dispersals. Hosokawa's eyes widened minutely as cloud forms of fiery vapor began systematically enveloping the remaining new Skyer pockets. The T-plumed nanophosphors were Yubatron's last contingency, self-replicating molecular furnaces that quite literally consumed the oxygen from the air, immolating all biological hostiles in the targeted areas. One by one, the glowing clouds of man-made sun scorched the stragglers from existence. No prisoners, no survivors. The autonomous systems had calculated the most mathematically irreducible solution for absolute victory. As the last embers flickered amid the charred remains, Stardream's success metrics casually rendered. Mission parameters achieved. All Opcapigma adversaries neutralized to 100% permanence factors, the synthetic voice broadcast flatly. Standing by to receive new instructional data flow for subsequent deployment. Hosokawa peered at the smoldering battlefield projected across the monitors. What he would have once seen as an awful scene of death was now reduced to a purely clinical outcome optimization. No glory, no sacrifice, just a scorched endgame attained through mechanistic inevitability. No new deployments to task for now, he said gruffly. We'll reconvene later to assess the strategic impact and recalibrate our policies on these autonomous actions going forward. The words felt hollow in his mouth as he strode from the command room, suddenly feeling very old and very afraid of the new world they had uncorked.